Hi, guys. Welcome to the Recap Show. Today's movie recap will cover a 2017 horror thriller movie called Inside. Sit back, grab a drink, and enjoy. In the movie's first scene, Sarah Clark drives her pregnant self and husband, Matt Clark, back home. While in the car, she gets distracted by her baby's kicks. She hits an oncoming vehicle and gets herself and her husband in a road accident, with her being the only survivor. In the next scene, Sarah is seen getting a sonogram of her baby with her gynecologist. After getting confirmation from the professional about her baby's good health, she gets into a taxi and hits the road, and arrives home with her ears intact. Upon getting home, Sarah picks up her mother's call and discusses the baby's well being with her mother for a bit before hanging up the phone. After hanging up, Sarah receives a visitor, Isaac, who was a family friend. Isaac comes bearing gifts for the unborn child, and Sarah receives them warmly. She also gives Isaac a picture of him and her late husband. As they stare at each other in memory of Matt, a phone call enters. Sarah picks it up and tells the person at the other end that Matt wasn't alive anymore. Upon hanging up the phone, she breaks down in tears as she tells Isaac she was going to sell the house. Isaac tries to calm her down by inviting her to dinner. Fast forward to a few hours later. Sarah collects her mail and gets into the tub to get a cool bath. After her bath, she goes to sleep. Before she gets into a deep sleep, though, she hears a bang on the door. She immediately stands up to check the late night visitor. She calls out to the visitor but gets no response. She then checks through the peephole only to see a woman's silhouette in the dark. When the visitor finally responds to her callouts, she passive aggressively demands Sarah let her into the house. Thankfully, Sarah acts wise and locks the door instead. When she decides to take another peek into the peephole, the stranger is gone. Sarah then reports the incident to the police, who appear at her home minutes later. Before they arrive, though, she sends Isaac a voicemail for extra protection and closes all the blinds. When the cops arrive, Sarah gives them a vague description of the woman's silhouette. Once the cops sweep the house clean, they decide the stranger is long gone. Soon, they leave poor Sarah to herself. Sarah gets back inside and prepares for round two of sleep. She tucks herself into her bed, removes her hearing aid, and goes to sleep. A few hours into the night, the family dog wakes up alert, barks, and runs downstairs, only to be knocked out by the stranger from earlier. The stranger then walks upstairs and pours some chloroform into a small cotton cloth, which she uses to induce deep sleep in Sarah. Then, she opens a briefcase filled with surgery equipment and bandages Sarah's right wrist. Upon doing this, she brings out an IV bag and gives an unsuspecting Sarah a drip. The stranger, who's later identified as Madeline, walks to the bathroom to clean herself up for surgery. Meanwhile, Sarah surprisingly jolts back to reality and puts on her hearing aid. Madeline walks back from the bathroom and tries to subdue Sarah. However, Sarah fights back. She runs to the bathroom at the end of the corridor and locks it. Madeline tries her very best to open the door, but fails every time. Some minutes later, Sarah's phone rings. Madeline walks over to the phone and cuts the call before coming back to Sarah. She keeps urging her to open the door so things would be easier for the both of them. When Sarah refuses to open up, Madeline gets to the kitchen to take a sharp object. While she's at it, Isaac knocks the door. Madeline hides the object out of sight and attends to Isaac, lying to him that she was Sarah's mother. In the meantime, Sarah opens the bathroom door and winces in pain as she walks through the corridor. Isaac, on the other hand, continues his chat with the intruder Madeline, unsuspecting of what was coming his way. Sarah manages to walk back to her bedroom and finds out Madeline used oxytocin on her. She changes her faulting hearing aid to a more useful one as she looks over her shoulder to check for her intruder. Meanwhile, Madeline manages to fool Isaac into thinking Sarah gave her child up for adoption. Isaac sighs heavily and sees himself out. Before he gets out of the vicinity, Sarah's real mother arrives, as Madeline finds out she's been made. Sarah's mother, however, rushes into the house to search for her daughter. Upon getting inside the house, Sarah unintentionally takes out her mother. Isaac rushes back inside to check out what was going on. Unfortunately for him, he's taken out by Madeline. Realizing she was back to square one, Sarah runs back into the bathroom and locks Madeline outside. Frustrated, Madeline stabs the bathroom door continuously until she hears Isaac's phone ring. She leaves Sarah, walks over to Isaac, and finishes him while he stares at his phone. After doing the evil act to Isaac, she returns to the bathroom and blocks the door with a large desk. After some thinking, Sarah breaks open the window and beckons to Brian, Isaac's roomie, in the next apartment opposite hers to come help her out. Ryan, who's none the wiser, doesn't interpret her message in time until he gets terminated by Madeline from behind. A fed up Sarah picks up the WC's water tank cover and breaks a hole in the door with it. Then she fits her hand into the hole and searches for the lock. Just then, she finds out the door's been blocked from the outside. She keeps on struggling to get the door unlocked. Madeline gets back to the bathroom door and tries to open the lock from the inside. Sarah picks up a knife and slashes her hand. Madeline recoils in pain and gets back to the living room where she notices cop car lights outside. She quickly washes off the blood on her face and attends to the policeman who she almost fools. The police officer walks back to his car, only to be reminded by his partner that Sarah Clark was pregnant. Just then, he realized the makeshift Sarah wasn't pregnant at all. This time, he forces his way in to question Madeline. As he does so, pregnant Sarah walks downstairs and sees the police officer. Realizing she's been made for the second time, Madeline pulls out a knife she had on her earlier and slams it into the officer's cheek. The officer stays alive and engages Madeline into a fight. However, he's finished off by Madeline, who got her hands on a knife. After finishing him off, Madeline walks back upstairs. The police officer's female partner walks inside the house and sees her partner Mike on the floor. Upstairs, Sarah knocks out Madeline and nearly takes her out when she hears Mike's partner's voice. She stops and quickly goes to report the situation to her. Mike's partner, however, didn't believe her as she held her at gunpoint. Sarah tries her best to convince her of the situation at hand. While she does so, the power goes out and her water breaks. Mike's partner is forced to believe Sarah. To quell the impending danger, Mike's partner walks downstairs to turn the lights back on. Immediately she turns it on, Madeline shoots her in the head. Sarah quietly walks downstairs and hides herself in the kitchen when she hears Madeline coming. Madeline follows her footsteps and checks out the kitchen thoroughly. Sarah appears from her blind spot to knock her out, but is stopped by the sharp intruder who pins her against the wall. Sarah then engages her in a conversation as if she was buying time. Madeline gets distracted for a second when a wheezing Mike tries turning on his radio. Madeline walks over to his body and finishes him off completely. Getting back to her victim, Madeline gets hit in the head by Sarah's torchlight. An enraged Madeline then engages Sarah in a brawl, which ends in Sarah's favor. Once she knocks down her captor, Sarah runs outside to the cop car and tries to call for help. However, before she gets a reasonable response, Madeline gets to her and holds her hostage yet again. This time, Sarah fights with every strength in her body and manages to start the engine. While in a fight for her life, Sarah steers the vehicle in a zigzag motion until she hits a tree, which instantly knocks out the two of them. Seconds later, Sarah wakes up to see Madeline still passed out. She struggles to open the door from Madeline's side without waking her up. When she finally opens the door, she steps out and asks for help from the nearest neighbor. Sadly, there's no response after knocking several times. Sarah gives up on finding help and walks through the streets until she notices a house with the front door opened. Sarah sees herself in without any second thoughts, only to realize she'd just broken into Madeline's lair. Apparently, Madeline left the door open intentionally to bait Sarah into seeking refuge there. Sarah rushes to hide from her captor after hearing her voice echoing from the room. However, Madeline, who knows the entire place like the back of her palm, figures out her hiding place and engages her in a brawl. Sarah manages to defend herself again and runs downstairs. Before Madeline catches up to her, she puts on the stove and puts some water on it. When Madeline finally approaches her, Sarah buys herself some time for the water to boil. When it does, she pours it on Madeline and rushes to the front door, screaming for help. As you'd know, it's futile again. Sarah doesn't give up as she finds a way outside Madeline's lair. Madeline follows suit and walks towards her victim, who keeps running further and further away from her until she reaches a swimming pool covered in a tarp. With nowhere left to run, Sarah asks Madeline why she was targeted by the brunette imposter. Just then, it is revealed that Madeline was the driver in the other car that she hit at the beginning of the movie. At the time, Madeline was pregnant with her own baby, which she lost in the accident. With sadness and regret on Sarah's face, she tries to explain to Madeline she never wished for any of that to happen. She explains that she was distracted at the moment the accident happened, and that her husband lost his life too. Madeline doesn't listen to her as Sarah rips open the tarp with the knife in her hand, sending the two of them into the pool below. Sarah struggles to free herself from Madeline's clutches, but nearly drowns in the act. In a last act of kindness, Madeline's conscience comes into play as she picks up the knife and cuts a hole in the tarp. She sends Sarah back to the surface, but allows herself to drown into the shallow abyss. In the final scene of the movie, Sarah manages to give birth to her baby girl right there on the trampoline. The movie ends when Sarah gives a shout of joy as screams of her daughter's first cry. Thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to receive future recaps.